Aliens Colonial Marines is Sega's latest effort to spark life into the Alien franchise. This time it's helmed by Gearbox Software of Borderlands fame, and is being seen as the true sequel to James Cameron's 1986 film Aliens, where you control US Colonial Marine Christopher Winter with the task of finding out what's gone wrong with the USS Sulaco, the ship we all know and love from the 1980s film.
So when you first start the game, you're on the Sephora, and the Sephora is another Conestoga class ship. It's more or less like the sister ship to the Sulaco. And so when you pull up to LV-426 after getting a stress signal, you find the Sulaco's floating in space. And you go through the Sulaco and you see parts of the ship you've never seen before. You're introduced to some very familiar things from the film. But all these places are very cool because they add different depths of gameplay to the xenomorphs. Because depending on what environment they're in, the challenges change. When you're in a steel tube, you know there's only so many ways a Xeno can come at you, right? But when you're walking down a hallway with half the floor missing, and the ceiling's all busted out, like you never know what Xeno's going to come from forever. So it builds a little bit of anticipation and a little bit of tension to it. That the more environments we introduce to the space, it's for the purpose of gameplay, not just to harken back to the films.
After hands-on with the game, we saw early parts of it in action, which will look more than familiar to fans of the film. The pace kicks into gear pretty quickly, and it's great to see these characters being brought to life in a game, with a fine amount of detail being paid to the timelines of all the films.
Aliens Colonial Marines takes place about 17 weeks after Aliens, the film. Yeah. So it takes place after Alien 3, technically, but you're more of a sequel to Aliens than we are Alien 3. Now, what happened in the Alien 3 actually happened in our game, and so those events are kind of history for us. So a lot of questions were asked even at the end of Alien 3, like, you know, what's Weyland-Yutani doing? Or, like, how did Egg get on the Sulaco? Like, there's all these weird questions that need to be answered. Now, we're not, you know, giving it all away for sure, but we're adding enough there and asking enough other questions and kind of giving people possibilities of some of the things that could have happened. It really makes the story that we have developed in the story of the universe just more complex and more interesting.
Despite the thrills and spills of the game, at its core it's just another FPS, and not really that much of a survival horror. Whether this is a bad thing is yet to be seen. However, using guns and kit, which has become ingrained into our pop culture subconscious, is just a dream come true for any Alien fan. And it doesn't just end with the campaign. There's an expansive multiplayer where teams of Marines are up against various species of alien.
Competitive multiplayer is really cool because you can play as Xenomorphs and you can play as Colonial Marines. And the Xenomorphs, one of the big things about them is they can crawl on every surface, and then they you know, just tear their face off. But you want to make sure that as a Marine, you're watching all your corners because they can really just come from anywhere. And then if you're playing as a Xeno, you got to be careful because you don't have a lot of health. Like if you get shot, you know, not a whole lot of times you're going to go down. So you need to be really sneaky. You need to be really, you have to think like a Xenomorph.
Overall, it looks like Aliens Colonial Marines will be the perfect mix of the film's mythology and action, which will be brilliant for any hardcore Alien fan. And with decent multiplayer options on tap, it should keep them occupied for a fair amount of time. However, what does worry us is the fact that it seems to be just a standard FPS, as from our perspective, an Alien game with the fear and action of Dead Space would be much more satisfying. Either way, we'll have to wait until February for the full product to find out.
The films left a lot of questions, a lot of desire for people, and we're trying to do the same thing, so that, you know, a sequel in the future, seeing that happen would be awesome because there's so much more to tell, so much more in this universe to actually explore, and we'd be so privileged to do so.